Hi, I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here at FedTalks with Bill Rowan, VP for Federal at VMware. Bill, thanks so much for joining us.
Wyatt, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be with you again today.
Well, let me start by asking, how has federal technology played a critical role in 2020 as an unprecedented pandemic has rocked the nation?
Well, Wyatt, it's interesting. If you had talked to me, say, a year ago and told me the transformation that the government would move down the digital transformation path in 2020 with everything else going on, I would have said, I just don't see it. I see the probability being quite low. But in many respects, our government has responded exactly the way the citizens of this country want the government to respond. They respond in a very timely fashion, became very innovative, were willing to take very prudent risk, all of which to us to ensure that the citizens of this country got the best, most functioning government they could. And that's not really a partisan issue. The issues that they were trying to foresee was not only did how do they continue to support the mission of the government, but also at the same time, how do they keep their employees in a safe environment? That's not just in DC, that's at offices across the country and for that matter, around the globe. So I think that stepping back, I have been so pleasantly surprised at how the government has embraced digital transformation. And the taxpayers of this country, I think, should also be very proud that their government had the kind of flexibility and fortitude to continue to press through to make sure they were accomplishing the mission that we asked them to do every single day.
Well, how can the federal government build on that accelerated deployment and maybe even leapfrog ahead a little in using modern and emerging technologies like cloud and AI and automation?
Well, I think this has been a great opportunity for the government to learn that some of these concepts, while maybe foreign, maybe sometimes scary, they're outside their comfort zone. The reality is there's enough history, both inside of government and outside of government, how these solutions can work. And I think that now that agencies are starting to see that the risks they took really weren't that big of a leap after all. We see agencies sharing authorities to operate on one cloud application to another, things that were set up by the FedRAMP office to do from the very, very beginning, but agencies were sometimes just a little hesitant to want to go do it. Well, now they're doing it. Now they see that actually this works quite well. In the same breath, they're learning how to utilize the assets of both their on-prem private clouds and those public cloud providers, whether they're IBM, Amazon, Azure, or whatever the case might be, various SaaS services from ServiceNow and Salesforce. And the reality is they're finding these solutions work quite well. And now what I see them doing is trying to understand, okay, what's the next step we can do? How we can continue this digital transformation we're on and make things even better. Most recently, VMware actually made an announcement with NVIDIA around artificial intelligence. NVIDIA, one of the leaders in AI. And we're starting to understand if we can start to capture that information as it's moving through the processor in their environment, what sort of information, what can we predict about what's going to happen next? And how are we using that to our greatest advantage? Again, to provide even greater automation, greater agility to the user community. And that's going to allow us to accomplish the mission in a much more not only a faster time frame, but also we're going to spend less money getting there too.
Well, next, I'd like to ask, how do you see the federal government working in new and maybe more creative ways now to bring talented technologists to its workforce?
Well, I think it's really a two-part issue. I think the first part is we're all competing for technologists, whether we're in private sector, whether we're in the government sector. And it doesn't not just, it's not just a DC thing. This is something we're challenged with across the country. I think the first part of this is the government has got a lot of very sharp technologists. And what the pandemic has taught us is that agencies are looking inward and saying, hey, how would you go about solving the problem? Forget some of the policies and regulations you've been dealing with. How would you go about solving this issue? So kind of the if you will, the training wheels or the governors have been taken off by some of the internal technologists we already had. That's presented a new sense of vigor and fascination with what's the art of the possible. And we see that in places like the DHS, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and multiple areas within DoD and the combatant commands. So that's the first good area. The second part is that technologists who are looking at the government, who always thought, oh, the government's behind. I don't want to go work in that environment. I want to go work for some, slick Silicon Valley type company, are now seeing the government is doing a lot of the same things that the Fortune 500 are doing, and they're doing them quite fast. And the other part is the government has the funding to do a lot of these projects, where a lot of corporate America has had to tighten down on some of the expenses because the pandemic has hurt sales or whatever the case might be. The government is continuing to spend to try to meet these mission challenges. So it can be a very exciting place for new technologists to want to go work and make their mark on the world.
Well, and lastly, Bill, you have an amazing front row seat on a lot of what's changing in technology and in government. What other trends or priorities do you have on your radar as we head into 2021?
Well, I think cybersecurity is going to continue to be one on the forefront. We see it both in the upcoming election and in the stories about, state hackers or nation states trying to influence the election. I think we see it every single day with people trying to penetrate the Pentagon systems or HHS systems. Criminals will be out there, and in some cases, they're not people who are exactly intending to try to hack something. They just end up making some bad keystrokes. So cybersecurity is going to continue to be on the forefront. I think you touched upon earlier with AI and ML. What can we learn about what's going on in our environments every single day, and how can we use that to make ourselves better? I think mobility will continue to be on the forefront of many CIOs, CTOs, and CISOs. I personally don't see us going back into an office environment probably for a number of months. And even then, we've now become more of accustomed to this balanced workplace where we're at home some of the time, we're remote some of the time, maybe not at home, maybe at a shared space, or we're at the particular office. And I think then the question becomes, how do we embrace that and make that a new part of a new culture that will be born, and allow the employees, whether they're government employees or contractors, to continue to add that they've done in the past to our agencies, to make them more flexible, more agile, and more responsive to to our country's needs over a period of time. It's going to be a very exciting next couple of years. I'm very confident of that.
I'd agree. Well, Bill Rowan, thank you so much for taking time to join us here at FedTalks. We always appreciate chatting with you.
Why, thank you very much, and you have a great day.